Okay, so we're going to talk about constraints, and these things can be very, very irritating, uh, very powerful, but can cause some havoc. So when using constraints, you just want to be very, very uh, methodical, careful, understand what you've placed. So uh, I'm going to go ahead and start drawing something here. So I'm just going to draw a triangle. This is how they do it in the book. Okay. Now, when you start drawing, you make these clicks. Now notice, and you've done this before. Okay. A lot of times it'll snap to, and you see right by my cursors there's this little icon. We'll go more into that in a little bit, but you're snapping to things, and those snaps that you're doing are actually setting constraints. This is going to set a horizontal constraint on here, okay? Similarly, you can see if I go straight up, I can have that little icon there. That's a perpendicular constraint. It could place these as I'm drawing, and you've been doing that, okay? Today we're going to be more careful and recognize what we're doing, what we have, what we don't. So I'm going to take that guy off, okay? And in fact, this is a constraint here as well. When I come down here and I click it to the end, this is what's called a coincident constraint, closing that thing up, okay? That's actually a constraint as well. Dimensions are constraints, okay? All sorts of things like that. Okay, but I'm just going to finish off that triangle like that. I'm not going to do that. Okay, but now if I right click and I go to show all constraints, or I can press F8 if I want to, you can see that it placed that horizontal constraint right in there. Okay, these dots are coincident constraints that they've placed in there. Okay, so you've got these constraints in there. Now, you'll see if I try to move this guy, okay, I can move that, but it will, no matter what I do, okay, it's going to keep that bottom one horizontal because I've got that constraint on there. If I want to take it off, I can right click on it, hit delete. Whoops, undo that. That's not what I meant to do. Make sure I'm off here. Right click on that constraint and hit delete. Now I could grab this. Oops. Well, it can be a little harder to see, but I could go ahead, and if I can figure out some way to do that, I'll do that in a little bit. Okay. So I could place other constraints. Okay. I could go ahead and place that perpendicular constraint that we almost placed by clicking here, and I click these two guys like that, and it'll force that guy to be perpendicular. Okay. So I could do that. Or I could make it vertical by just clicking that, and it'll put that vertical constraint in there. And you can see, again, it places that vertical constraint right in there. Got a parallel, right? So I could draw a line, say like this. Okay, and now I could set this line parallel with this line and make them parallel like that. Now the other thing I could do, again, hopefully this will work out better. So again, as I move this, it's going to keep all of those constraints where they need to be. I can remove this constraint. Doesn't always work like I like it to. I can remove this constraint, okay, and then if I grab this guy over here, I no longer have that horizontal constraint on there. Or I guess that was a parallel constraint on there. Okay. Yeah, let me go ahead. I'm going to toss a circle in here. Okay. And I'm going to do the tangent constraint here. So after I place it in there, I can place this constraint. I can click the circle. I can click a line. And you see that it places that tangent constraint there. So as I move this, I can move it any which way. It's going to keep it tangent to that line, however I move it. Okay. Whoops. Let me undo that. Whoops. That's... I'm not sure why it's not letting me. Okay. Well, let me go ahead and draw another circle. Okay. because I want to show you another constraint here, and that's the coincident constraint. Okay, so I can basically select these two circles, and if I have that coincident constraint, then they sit right on top of one another. Let me bring up all of my show all constraints, right? So you've got this coincident constraint right here where they sit in the same. Now, concentric would be for the circle. A coincident, if let's say I want to make the end of this line go to the center of this circle, okay, that's the coincident constraint. Okay, now, as you can see, this starts getting confusing. This starts getting overwhelming. You start losing track. It starts jumping where you don't want to. So again, this is the sort of thing where you want to be slow and methodical as you place these constraints. Okay. Another constraint that we have. So let me go ahead and, other constraints are, I'm going to delete these lines and circles because I want to very specifically okay. I think that's a circle in there. There we go. Okay, so notice down here it says 4 dimensions needed. Okay, so I've got a horizontal and a vertical constraint in there. Again, I can put these dimensions in there, call that 1. I can call this 0.5. Okay, and now you're thinking to yourself, well, that's fully constrained. There's nothing else I could do, right? Because if I came in here and put that in there, that would over constrain it. Okay, but you see down here it says 2 dimensions are still needed. And the thing is I can still move this guy around, right? I can grab and I can move however I need to. And that's the problem, is I haven't constrained it to the thing. So you could do something like fixed, where I can fix, say, the corner right where it is. And you can see right now it says fully constrained. Okay, now I'm going to delete that constraint. You could also do like a coincident constraint where you snap it to the center there, make these 2 points coincident. That might be a better thing. Again, you can see down here it says fully constrained. That way you know if you've got fully constrained items right there. So the book walks you through auto dimension. I am not a big fan of it. It places dimensions that potentially mean nothing to you. I think it's better to go through and fully constrain everything on your own. Okay. Now, one last thing is this idea of parametric equations. You can set, for example, I could set this dimension, and I could just set it, rather than calling it 0.5, I could just set it, say, equal to that dimension, where I just click on it and hit enter. And you can see now that dimension is the same as the, the 1 inch. So if I change this, say, to 0.9, it'll automatically change that other one. Okay. Or I could type in, and it doesn't just have to be equal. I could say, okay, let's set it equal to this equation divided by 2. Okay. And then you see it makes it 0.45 from the 0.9. So again, if I up this to say 1.5, it'll change that to 0.75. Okay, so this is a powerful way to do it. You can do things where I know something's got to be twice as big as the other, or 3 times as big as the other. If you're trying to center something, you could do it that way. Make it half the length. That way, if you make a change to one dimension, then you can update all the other dimensions. So that is kind of a smart way that you can go about doing a lot of this stuff. So, so as you go through the book, make sure they do a pretty good job. Make sure you follow it. Get all the constraints in there when you turn in your assignment. Okay. Again, when dealing with these constraints, sometimes you're just going to have to kind of delete all the constraints and start over. Sometimes it can get so frustrating that you just should start the whole drawing over. Okay, and be very methodical as you step through. These things can get very frustrating in going through it. And the best way to do it is just go one constraint at a time. Make sure it does what you want. Reorient as needed, and move forward like that. So good luck with that.